Welcome to week 6 of Rebuild Mark. I'm Mark Still. It was a relatively quiet week from a training standpoint. It was not an off week, but just a couple of really light rides because this weekend I did my functional threshold test. First one of those I've done in 15 or 18 years. I think it went pretty well. I think I could have done better, but again, I haven't done that kind of effort in a long time, so I'm pretty happy with it. I'm going to wait to talk about what those test results show until Coach Kristen has a chance to review things. But all in all, I think it went pretty well. Ended up being a beautiful day. I used Left Hand Canyon north of Boulder for that test just to have a long uphill section. And it was beautiful. If you got to go out and suffer through something like an FTP test, it's nice to do it in a beautiful environment. I'm going to leave it at that for the update this week because I got to talk to Jenny and Jeff Vierling, the founders of Tailwind Nutrition. And that's what I'm going to show you this week. I had a great chat with them about why they founded the company and what they hope to accomplish with it, and got some great useful tips for fueling with their products. And I've been using them for a couple weeks now. I like them a lot. I don't know. They work and they taste good and they're easy to use. That's most of the important things that these products need to do. So without further ado, here's my chat with Jenny and Jeff Vierling of Tailwind Nutrition. Okay, so Jeff and Jenny, thank you so much for visiting, and thank you so much for supporting my my Rebuild Mark project. How are you guys doing today?
Great.
We're doing great.
Yeah. Are you you're not in the same building today this morning?
Actually, we're about 10 feet away from each other.
Awesome. I would have expected. I guess Jenny's got everybody's got earbuds in, so that'll keep the echo from stopping. But thanks for the time. I wanted to visit because I was excited. I had not heard of Tailwind Nutrition before. And you guys had reached out, or your team had reached out, and it's exactly the kind of product that appeals to me. I've always had a lot of gastric issues with these long events. You know, there was an Ironman event in 2008. I thought I was done because of those issues, and I did stumble through it, but it was great to read the process, and I want to hear a little more about that. But it was great to read the process and how you guys approach the product. And I've been using the product a little bit so far, and so far so good. But tell me, there's a lot of great information on your website, but just in a nutshell, what was the genesis of the product, and why did you feel like it was a good idea to start a nutrition company?
Well, the genesis of it goes back to my head in the trash can at the finish line of the Leadville 100 mountain bike race. And I was puking up the muesli that I'd had 13 hours earlier. And that was really just the evidence that nothing had gotten through all day. And it was just, you're laughing. So anybody who's been through that experience, you know, it is painful.
Yeah.
And it was super frustrating because I trained really well for that race, but at the same time, my nutrition really didn't work. So that just started a journey for me of trying to figure out what I could do differently. And I tried various products in the market, but I was taking kind of a shotgun approach. I didn't have any background or understanding of why I would pick one thing over another.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't really having success with that approach. So I started to just dive into the medical and scientific literature about how our bodies absorb fuel. Again, just kind of looking for insights so I could choose something better. But as I started to do that, I realized that there were reasons why some of the products I was trying weren't really working for me. And I didn't see anything that I thought matched how our bodies absorb fuel. And so that led me to just start making my own on the premise that if I could reduce the need for digestion or eliminate that I might be able to get some things through.
So simpler the better.
Simpler the better, and to work with the way the body absorbs fuel and not sort of against it or challenging the digestive system at the time when you need all the calories you can get, and your blood flow is going to your muscles, is going to your capillaries to keep you cool. It's not it's not available for digestion.
Yeah.
So,
and Jenny,
so that was some of the
were you playing
background
along with this at the same time, or where did you begin to get involved with these products?
Well, I first really noticed it when I started walking into the kitchen, and I'd be walking into basically pixie land. Do you remember those pixie sticks from when you were growing up? Yeah. So when I'd walk into the kitchen, he was mixing up this formulation or his concoction, kind of like the mad scientist on our old KitchenAid, which was my grandmother's. And yeah, there was just these suspended particles in the air. And then I would inhale it and I'm like, oh my goodness, this transports me back to my childhood.
Yeah.
And so I think, for a while when he started riding with it, I was in denial. I was like, oh, this is something that Jeff is working on. And then we both did the Silver Rush mountain bike race up in Leadville. And he had a great experience riding with his own stuff. And of course, I was riding with my tried and true. And, we were talking about GI distress, and that's what I suffered. And at the halfway point, I just couldn't stomach what I was drinking. And so my stomach just shut down, and I made it back. I finished, but it was pretty much on fumes. And I had another ride coming up. It was a century ride, the mountains. There's a mountains to desert ride that starts in Telluride. I said, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and give it a try. And I tried it, and I just ran with it for the full century, and it was great.
Yeah.
I had no stomach issues. I had sustained energy levels. I said, okay, I believe it. I'm a believer. So that was my involvement. And then Jeff took it from there in terms of kind of beta testing it. And I'll let Jeff tell that story, because that really was what pushed us over the threshold of turning it into a nutrition company.
The mess in the kitchen thing resonates because I'm into coffee. So my wife loves the result of what, and I do a lot of the cooking here. So she loves the results of those things, but I'm like a hurricane in between the start and the finish. Well, tell us about that, Jeff. So once it was working for you, what was your next step to guinea pigging your friends, or what was the next step in that process?
I was guinea pigging my friends. There's a group here in Durango where we live, and it's a bike and brews group. So we go out for rides and then hit the bar afterwards. And I was literally bringing baggies of white powder and handing it out around the table, just getting people's feedback and boy, they just kept coming back and saying, hey, this is the best stuff I've ever used. Can I get some more? So more and more powder going around our kitchen. And then I found myself meeting people in parking lots and handing off
bags of white powder,
gallon Ziplocs of white powder.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, it was pretty sketchy.
Yeah.
Years ago, there was, as I was trying to work through those things, I ran across the science around, or at least articles around, we're burning lots of calories, but physiologically, we can only process a lot less than that in a given hour. So there's no reason to consume more than that. And lately I've seen different approaches as I watch pro cycling, where supposedly there's a new combinations of molecules that allow us to process way more carbohydrate per hour than previously we thought, or previously could be done with things like maltodextrin. And on the website, and I still tend to stick to that 200 to 300 calorie an hour. I'm always a little hesitant to go any more than that. What you're thinking on that now, and for something like an Unbound Gravel, where it's going to be 14, 15, 16 hours, where do you think the products lay? And I do want to eat some solid food in there. So what's your thinking on that calories per hour thing these days?
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, what you're referring to is that we do what the studies have shown in some of the testing with cycling teams and running teams as well has shown is that we do have the capability to recruit more transports for the sugars in our guts and allow more of that to be absorbed per hour. However, that is something that has to be trained over time. So it is a bit of a advanced technique, if you will. You can do it, but not right. You can't go straight from, say, 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour up to 90. If you try and do that, you're likely to have GI distress. So it's not that the molecules have changed so much. The absorption that takes place in the small intestine through transport mechanisms is for glucose and fructose sugars and the individual sugar molecules. So whatever you ingest has to be digested and broken down into those individual molecules before they can be absorbed. That part is not changed, but what has changed is the realization that by feeding your gut more carbohydrate in a gradual basis and ramping that up, that the gut will respond by creating more pathways for those molecules to be absorbed. And so you can build up into a higher rate of carbohydrate absorption. And what that can do is it can support a higher output and a higher intensity of exercise. So that's why you see it really with the professionals and elites, because they can gain a competitive advantage there.
So now, if middle-aged dude gets off the couch and jumps down and starts choking down 90 or 100 grams of carbohydrate an hour, not a good recipe.
It's not a good recipe because what you're going to probably wind up doing is having incomplete absorption of those sugars. And then they pass from the small intestine to the large intestine. And the large intestine is where all the bacteria hang out, and they would feast on that sugar. And then you're running for the bushes.
Yeah. So again, that gets back to your point of keep the sugar simple, because that's what it's got to be broken down to that anyway. If we start there, we're just a step ahead of the game.
Right. You're basically eliminating a step of digestion that both takes energy and time. So you don't want to be too counterproductive with that what you're eating. If you're eating a solid food, for example, it might be satisfying for your stomach, but it takes more work for your digestive system to break it down into the component elements that can be absorbed. And that both can cost you from a calorie standpoint, and it places demands on your digestive system, which at the time if you're in the middle of a race, your blood flow is away from your digestive system. So for most people, that efficiency goes down. And that's obviously highly personal, right? Some people can digest more than others under duress. I happen to be one of those that can't digest much when I'm working out hard.
Is there a hydration component to it as well? In other words, it takes a certain amount of fluid to help that process along, probably even more if you're eating solid foods.
Absolutely. What happens when you eat any kind of food is it goes into your stomach, and the stomach is really just making soup out of that. It's breaking down kind of mechanically, and also with the stomach acid, breaking down whatever you're eating into small enough particles suspended in water that can be then passed into the small intestine. Mm-hmm. So there's not absorption of you're not absorbing energy from your stomach. It's really just like a holding tank and making soup out of it. So if you kind of think about like a clear drink mix like Tailwind, it is already soup. There's nothing to do there. And you've got all the water that you need. But where we see athletes run into trouble often is that they'll take in food, but not enough water. And what the body will do is flush water from the bloodstream into the stomach to make that soup. But you can wind up, really dehydrating yourself that way. And and that will catch up to you in a longer race. If you're out there 14, 16 hours, it absolutely would catch up to you. So yeah, there's definitely a hydration element. And the way these transport mechanisms work in the small intestine is really cool. They will, let's take a glucose transport, for example. It will grab a glucose sugar molecule. It'll grab sodium molecules, which you need also to activate these transports. So the electrolyte component also has to be there. and it will actively pump those across the intestinal barrier into your bloodstream. Then you've got the glucose. Now your muscles can burn that. Your brain can use it. You've got now sodium molecules as well. And those sodium molecules will attract water through the pores in the small intestine. And so it's really it's actively sucking water in as well. So you're able to hydrate at a faster rate using that pumping and sucking action than just drinking plain water alone. So it's really cool I think from an evolutionary standpoint that our bodies have this very efficient mechanism to take the three things that we need to support long output, long endurance, and combine them all into one system.
Yeah. Jenny, I interrupted you earlier. Were you about to say something?
You actually took the words right out of my mouth when you were talking about simple sugars versus other forms of sugars. So like maltodextrin or cluster dextrin, is that there are actually two steps in this process that a lot of people don't think about. So there's the emptying from the stomach, but then the real gating factor is that absorption piece. And that absorption piece is based on breaking it down into individual molecules of glucose and fructose. And like Jeff said, that takes time and energy. And so that was the only point I wanted to bring up. And the other thing is that, I think nutrition is a personal choice. And when people are using a solution like Tailwind Nutrition, which is all in one and is designed to be like super easy. So a bottle an hour and you're good. You don't need to separate your electrolytes from your calories from your hydration. But there becomes a point like psychologically where you just want to choose something. Yeah. Like some folks, they just want to choose something. For me, it happens like around hour 4 or 5. And I'll just grab an item that's high in glucose, for example, a banana. And then I would dial back my caloric intake, my other caloric intake is the Tailwind, to accommodate those additional calories coming in from a banana. So say a banana is about 100 calories, then I dial back Tailwind to 100 calories to accommodate those 100 calories coming from the banana for that particular hour. And then I'm back to my straight Tailwind. Yeah. So there is this equation. It's like scientifically, absolutely, you can run on Tailwind as your sole fuel source, but psychologically, you just might need something extra. And that's
I'm 100%
totally okay.
that way. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, but yeah. This helps though, because, what I would typically do is have some liquid calories and then in maybe a bento box, a bunch of little mini waffles that I'm so constantly eating those. Mm-hmm. So what this tells me is I'm going to have better success if maybe I save that solid psychological eating for the two big checkpoints where there's support. And, and keep in mind that for that next hour after 2 hours after, I have to change that ratio of what I'm drinking out of the bottle. So that's I have to have something to chew on for sure. Something a little salty, something a little sweet, but it sounds like I'll be more successful if I change the way I do that.
Yeah. I mean, in general, we say, and everybody has their own sweet spot. So mine is 225 calories per 20 ounces of water per hour. Jeff runs his at 250 calories per 24 ounces of water. And once you find your sweet spot, then you know how many calories to target on a per hour basis. So I know I need to take in 225 calories per hour per 20 ounces of water. And that's what I'll target. And then once you have that ratio figured out, it's super easy to kind of just pay attention to that. And you may be in an area, so folks in Florida, where it's really hot and humid and they're sweating a lot more. Mm-hmm. So they might have to increase that hydration component for me, for example, from 20 ounces to 24 ounces per hour, just to take into account the fact that I'm sweating a lot more if I go do a race in Florida, for example. Yeah. But your calorie intake per hour, pretty much that stays the same.
Yeah. So far I've been using, and I've only done a couple of longer rides. I did 4 hours last Sunday with just the Tailwind. And not just Tailwind. I did stop a couple times. I needed some of those little waffles. And I don't think that was nearly enough calorie because on the last little bit pushing home, the legs were a little heavy. I was trying because I read on the site, pay attention to your satiation. If you feel hungry, then you got to have more calorie. I'll tell you this, and this is not just because we're talking on the phone. I mean, I would tell anybody this. I expect after a 3, 4, 5 hour ride, when I step off the bike, no matter what I've done to fuel in that, I've always had a little bit of, I'm just a little bloated when I step off the bike. You can just tell it's not all. I stepped off the bike and looked down and went, nothing. Wow. So it was definitely different using Tailwind versus what I typically use. So I think that's progress.
Yeah.
And that's very helpful for that process. So I'm thinking, since we're talking about that, if it's okay, let's kind of talk a little bit about the specifics of the use case. And then I want to hear about what you guys are doing in New Zealand, because you're going to be heading off soon for fun stuff. So I'm thinking now something between 250 and 300 calories in the bottles of the endurance fuel, and a hydration pack on the back with water, just water, so that I can modulate if I feel like I need more fluid. And then, yes, I'm going to, probably at mile 80 and mile 160, I'm going to eat whatever's in that stop that I have to pay for support. I don't have my own support person. They have sandwiches. I'm going to eat something at that stop. Does that make sense, having the pure water on the back to try and throttle the need for hydration? Because Kansas, it could be 80 degrees or it could be 100. It could be 60% humidity or 80% humidity. Does that sound like it gives me the most? Because I can't really, once I mix all that stuff up, once I have little baggies made with the right amount of Tailwind in it, I can't really change that on the fly. All I can really do is change the ratio with the water on the back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's true. I think you certainly have some flexibility there. For me, what works best is I will throw, I have a pretty good sense of how much Tailwind and how much water I'll go through over a period of time. So I tend to use it in a pack, with the water, and just make it really simple that way. Um, but we definitely have customers who take that approach of trying to get the calories through their bottle, and then they have some extra water, even if they want to just swish it around their mouth, or have a little change of flavor and taste. That's yeah, put it over your head, right? You can do that with Tailwind, but it's a little sticky. You don't want to do that. So that is a reasonable approach. I think the main points to keep in mind are to have a consistent calorie intake per hour. And that is the thing that you kind of dial in by training. As Jenny said, like my rate, if I get 250 calories an hour, I can go all day, no problem. I never really feel like I lose energy or mental clarity. So that's my rate. It does vary kind of by person. And as we talked about, that can be higher if you've trained for it. But in a long race, like Outbound, you're actually going to be at a pace that is sustainable at a lower calorie rate. So you don't necessarily need to go there. And for most people, the longer it goes, the closer you get to, a little lower burn, right? Because you just can't sustain that output from a muscle standpoint. So, so it's totally appropriate to be in that 200 to 300 calories per hour range. I think the other thing you mentioned is taking little bites with the waffles, and that brings up a really key point, which is the strategy of sipping your calories or having little nibbles like that is less challenging to your digestive system, because you're giving it small amounts to process, then say like having a big chunk of food, trying to get like 300 calories in all at once. And then asking your digestive system to break all that down and let it get in. So it's something to consider as you think about that. Having some food along the way is to still keep that food pretty simple. Things like Jenny said, bananas, mostly glucose. So it's a pretty good choice. Other fruits can be high in fructose, and our bodies are a little less capable of absorbing fructose. So you can run the risk of overdoing it on that, and then not really absorbing all of it. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind, that, more of the glucose kinds of things, breads, starches, things that are fairly easy to break down. You just kind of want to keep that as what you'd go for, versus things that are like a meat or something like that, that's going to be much harder and could actually, like a turkey sandwich could take 3 hours to get through.
Goodness.
So it might feel good in your stomach, but it's not necessarily going to help you in the race.
Gotcha.
The other thing that I would add is things tend to catch up with you. So, with those mini waffles. So I don't know how many calories they are a piece, but if, let's say, they're 10 calories a piece and you're nibbling.
3 is 130 calories. So they're closer. They're 40 plus calories a piece.
Okay. Yeah. So if you are nibbling on them and you love them, and before you know it, you've gone through 4 of them.
I wouldn't do that.
Then, it's funny because we would have people write in. They said, I ran or I biked with Tailwind and I was having a great experience. And then it kind of went south. And then we started breaking down what actually happened. And they were running with Tailwind, and then they got to the aid station and they grabbed some M&Ms and they grabbed some pretzels. And then before you know it, they were up over like 400 calories. They're between 400 and 500 calories. And we're like, so you kind of overloaded your gut there with too many calories. So that's something always to be cognizant of, because it is super easy.
I'm off the waffles.
It tastes really great in the moment.
I'm off the waffles.
No, waffles are great. Waffles are great.
No, because this is, I look at something like Unbound, and it's legitimately, if I have a great day, it's 14 and a half, 15 hours. If I have a reasonable day, it's 16 or 17 hours. That's on one hand a very long time to do something. On the other hand, it's not even a whole day. I could do anything for less than a day. So I'm happy to adjust if it takes one variable away from the equation of trying to figure out what I'm going to do with bad stomach.
Don't overlook that sense of
I heard you.
Pleasure. So so if you need that waffle, go ahead and grab it.
I don't need the waffle. I could quit
anytime. The calories
anytime.
have to come from elsewhere.
Yeah, I think what Jenny's just saying is there's flexibility, but be consistent with your calorie intake.
Right.
That is super important. If you overdo it, you can wind up in a world of hurt. We were at Leadville a couple of years ago, and at the dam aid station, and watched a person across from us join his family, and then he waited for his friend or something like that. But as he's sitting there waiting, we watched, they kept on feeding him stuff. We saw him put down about 2,000 calories. And I was just like, that guy's got the power line climb ahead of him. This is gonna not go well. Yeah. So I was wishing him well, but
it was unlikely.
It's easy to do. And that you mentioned something about variables and consistency. And that was one of the things that I was really trying to do with developing what became our endurance fuel, is to take some of that away. Because the more complex it is and the more things you have to juggle, number one, it's just stress on you, as you're out there trying to enjoy your ride. Like, do you really want to have to worry about whether you took that extra electrolyte pill like an hour ago, or was that 10 minutes ago? It becomes hard to remember those things after 6 hours, right? But also it plays into consistency, and the consistency of your training and the consistency of your experience with fueling. It is the more variables you introduce to that, the harder that is to manage. So that was really the idea behind creating an all-in-one drink, is that you could just sip it and go and not have to worry about whether your nutrition was covered or not. There was one lady I lined up next to at Leadville, and she had a spreadsheet taped to her top tube and 2 timers, and that was to track her nutrition plan. And I was like,
I haven't taped a spreadsheet to it, but I have had it be relatively complicated before. And the other side of complicated is it's something to take my mind off of what's going on. But at some point, and you mentioned it earlier, there's also this clarity that you lose at some point in an endurance event if things don't go right. So, I got one more question about ingredients, and that is some of the Tailwind products have caffeine in them. What's the thinking on having the caffeine, and what is the expected upside, and is there a downside to it? For instance, isn't caffeine a bit of a diuretic? So is there a downside, and is there a good time and a bad time to consider using the versions that have caffeine in them?
Hmm. So the caffeine, we generally steer clear from supplements, and that the reason for that is that most supplements don't have a solid scientific consensus behind their having a proven benefit for endurance. The real exception to that is caffeine, and caffeine has a couple different purposes. One is that central nervous system boost we all are familiar with if you have coffee or what have you in the morning. So for a lot of our customers, when they are doing like an Unbound, like a 14, 16-hour type effort, if they are caffeine drinkers on a regular basis, they want to not they don't want to change that up. They want to keep being able to consume some caffeine during that kind of a day, because that's what their bodies are used to. So so part of it is to support that. There are studies that are very convincing about caffeine and the ergogenic benefit, and that does happen at a fairly high dosage of caffeine. And what that can do is it mobilizes fatty acids in your bloodstream that can be burned by your muscles, and it extends your endurance. So some of those studies have shown 15 to 20% potential gain for endurance,
Wow.
which is pretty incredible. Again, that one takes a little bit of planning and forethought, and you'd want to train. You'd want to train like you'd race, to take advantage of that. But that's why we have caffeine available. And then you asked about the downsides, the diuretic aspect. Basically, the studies found that does not apply in exercise. It doesn't show up in exercise. Probably having to do with your metabolism of it is faster while you're exercising. So
I am
altogether,
well
that's
acclimated.
an option. Yeah.
Yeah, I am well acclimated to caffeine. As I mentioned earlier, I have a coffee
That's right.
thing. My little, in fact, I'll show everybody
Coffee
here.
habit.
My espresso setup is quite nice. I even roast my own coffee. But so that makes a lot of sense. So I think the way I might look at that, in order to take advantage of the habitual nature of how I consume caffeine, is think about that day in the same time chunks and have the caffeinated versions of Tailwind about the times that I would normally have my coffee during the day. And that's the best chance of me maintaining the same sort of physiological setup that I would have on a normal day anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. That makes a lot of sense. Was there anything that you guys wanted to mention specifically that we didn't talk about?
The only thing that I'd like to mention is recovery, just in general, that it's a piece that people often overlook. They go out and they do their ride, and then they're setting up to do their next ride. And a key component in training is the ability to recover. And so if you've gone out and you've stressed your system a lot, it's really important that you target about 400, I think Jeff knows the specific numbers, but about 400 calories or 425 calories to replenish your glycogen stores immediately, and then 15 grams of complete protein over the course of a couple of hours. But that magic window immediately post exercise is extremely important to replenish your glycogen stores. And if you take the time to recover, it will set you up for a better training session the next time. And I just wanted to mention that because as a person who also is older, so pushing 60, so it just takes me a lot more time to recover than what it used to in my 20s. And taking that time to recover and getting in the appropriate nutrients to help you recover, it's been a game changer for me.
Yeah, I think especially as you go into the build phase of your training, and you're upping your intensity, that's where you really need to take care of that recovery, because you're going to deplete your glycogen stores, which are your energy reserves, and that's what your body's drawing upon, or one of the things that your body's drawing upon to make up that calorie difference between what you're burning and what you can take in. And it's kind of overlooked, like Jenny said. Like, most people don't realize it's actually the replenishing of those glycogen stores that is the first step, and you need it because it's what makes you feel like you've got some energy left in your legs the next day.
Yeah.
And you can go hard the next day. And it's also important because you have to have sufficient glycogen stores on hand before the body will turn on the hormones that will rebuild muscle. Because it takes energy to rebuild muscle. And so you have to have those energy stores rebuilt in order to effectively rebuild your muscle. So
that's resonating a bit this week. So we finished the first big block with my coach, Kristen Legan, who everybody in Gravel knows who Kristen is. And this is a rest week. And then I'm doing an FTP test on Sunday. And I was supposed to do Tuesday, just an hour, super easy. I could barely turn the pedals. And I've been using the Tailwind recovery formula, but only on the bigger rides, thinking that I'm still got this weight loss mindset, but sounds like I could do more damage to the future by not giving my muscles and my system a chance to recover from all those efforts.
So in that time period, right after you finish exercising, you have this special period where you are you have a higher insulin receptivity, so energy can get pushed into cells more quickly, and the ability to store that energy is re-enabled. It's stopped during exercise, and that is because your cells are saying, "Hey, I want to get the energy in, but I don't want to lose it. I want to use it all." Right. But then right afterwards, you can still get energy in really easily, but you can also store it more easily, so that you can accelerate the replenishing of your glycogen stores if you give it the right amount of carbs and the right types of carbs right away. And I would argue, like, even on a more moderate day, you would want to do that because you still have burned through a number of your glycogens. You're not offsetting weight. At that point, your body's going to actually just shunt all that stuff right back into your glycogen stores and rebuild that. And then that will enable you to have a harder workout the next day. So you can stack more hard training together without having to kind of say like, oh man, I have to back off because I just don't have the legs.
Well, that's good news because the Tailwind recovery stuff's delicious. It's like drinking Yoo-Hoos or something. So I'll just have more of that. Jenny, thanks for bringing that up. That's a big thing, and it does make a lot of sense how I just had nothing this week, and it should have been an easy week. I think there was just a depletion that I wasn't doing a good job of using that golden 30 minutes or whatever it is to get the energy back topped off. Well, that's good. I think that's a lot of great information about the pieces and the parts, but let's talk about you're heading to New Zealand. So a short plane ride. And what are you guys doing there?
So we are doing a race called the Fault Line, and Jeff and I are riding it as a team. It's 100 milers, so Jeff will do 50 miles and I'll do 50 miles, and then we each get to do about 8,000 feet of climbing. So yeah, so we're really excited. We've never been to New Zealand, and everything we've heard about is that it's extraordinarily beautiful and the people are great. So we're anxious to get there. Our partner in New Zealand, who manages New Zealand, he invited us out. He said, "Hey, it's this new race. Do you want to try it?" And we're like, "Yeah, we'll give it a go." Of course, we didn't realize when we said yes that we didn't process. There's some fine prints. We didn't quite process that we'd be training through the winter rather than in the spring and building up to it. And there's also this extra fine print that the race starts at 3:30 in the morning. So that's what Jeff gets.
I'm actually not sure I think maybe the flight over there is going to be more of an endurance challenge than the race.
That's true.
It can definitely give it a run for money. But yeah, the cool thing about this race, there's the Fault Line Ultra and the Fault Line Challenge, and it's the Ultra is a running race and the challenge is the mountain bike race. We're going to do the mountain bike, and but I get to start at 3:30 in the morning, which should be interesting. That means I'm having breakfast at like 1:30. And then the runners start about 10 minutes after the bikers. And from what I've seen on the Strava profile, this thing's got about 2 kilometers of relatively flat. And then we do like a 1,500 foot climb. So I am, here's the kicker. you're out of the race if you get caught by a runner.
Oh, I love that.
I know. So
Because
I don't know
in
how
my head,
many.
I was thinking there's going to be that math doesn't work. There's going to be cyclists getting caught by runners on such a climb like that.
Yeah. So
I mean,
I
not
am.
you, obviously, but some.
I don't know. This has been it's been a challenge to try and train for this over the winter, and it seems to like we finally have some beautiful weather here in Durango, but man, it has been snowing like every weekend, and
Yeah.
it has been tough to get the bike miles in, and particularly tough on the climbing, because if you try and climb anywhere, you run into snow. So yeah, we did about we do about 4.5 hours on Sunday, and we got about 5,000 feet of climbing in, just doing laps on some local climbs, and that's about as far as we've gone,
So,
both
so
in
I kind of
hours
have
and
this,
climbing.
yeah, and I kind of have this mantra now. It's like DFL before DNF.
There you
So
go. Well, it's kind of up to Jeff. I mean, if he gets
that's
caught, you
true.
never even get to, you can just
I
sleep
know
in.
I'll never live this down, like fly halfway around the world for a 30-minute race.
and Jenny never even gets to climb on the
She
bike.
never even gets to go.
That'd be a story in and of itself.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, not a good one though.
Yeah,
Well,
but
that is exciting.
we've been looking at videos and just looking at the terrain, and it just looks amazing. There are all these different ecosystems that we'll be
Yeah.
riding through. There's this fantastic mountain bike called Manuka Mountain Bike Park, where there's some incredible trails, and it goes through there. So yeah, it should be some great riding, and probably
Yeah.
some riding that we never would have experienced here. For example, running into kiwi birds. Kind of looking forward to that.
Right.
Yeah.
There are kiwi birds. There's, I guess like it ties together multiple mountain bike parks. So you get to kind of experience a bunch of different parks. And it's all kind of going around the harbor and bay around Wellington. It looks from the photos like spectacular views, and it would be really fun, I think.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll get down to Durango after you're back, and we'll talk about that and Unbound and what everybody did and how it all went.
That.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I've been to Durango once. It was beautiful. I'm in Erie, so I'm about over on the Front Range, but we'll get down there and visit. All right. Well, this has been awesome. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate getting to meet you guys. I hope you have a great time in New Zealand. Look forward to hearing about it. Maybe we'll all ride together some point in the summer down in Durango.
Or maybe we'll meet you and you can, serve us some of your delicious coffee. And we'll sit around your table and we'll go through our different adventures.
I love making coffee for folks. It's just, I just get a kick out of it. I've got I love the gadgets and the process of it. So if you're ever up near this way, maybe on the way to the airport from Durant, I don't know how you get to, at least you're flying out of DIA, so you might come right by. I have the co-cups too, so when we're done, you can take some with you to go. I love making coffee for folks.
Awesome.
Okay, we'll take you up on that for sure. Awesome. Well, good luck with your training, Mark, and let's stay in touch and shoot us any questions you have.
Oh, I will, and I really appreciate that. Thanks, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
Take care.